So we're going to talk about the advisability of a workers' party in the United States at this time. And I've been going around saying that people should be considering, and Kenneth says, my friend Kenneth Williams says the opposite. So we decided to have a debate. So Kenneth, take it away.
Okay, good afternoon. Uh, my name is Kenneth Williams. I'm the president of the Dallas chapter of the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans and a Democratic Party activist. The question of whether or not there should be a workers' party or some kind of progressive political party uh, as opposed to working through the Democratic Party itself is a question that has kind of been a major question for people on the progressive left for a very long time. I've thought about this question, and my conclusion is it is not feasible, no matter how desirable it might be. It's not feasible, and that's because in the American political system, as I read it, our Constitution creates an inadvertent two-party system. That is to say, there's a set of rules in the Constitution that drive America toward two major parties and a maximum of two major parties. And these rules, the way I think of them, if you could imagine a garage, if you have a two-car garage, you can't park three cars in a two-car garage. You can park two cars in a two-car garage. You can park one car, but you can't park three cars. And an attempt to try to say you're going to create this other major third party is going to fail for that reason. And some of the reasons, some of the rules that I think drive us toward a two-party system is that in the American political system, it gives more weight to geography than to population in many instances. The obvious one being the U.S. Senate, where California gets two senators and North Dakota gets two senators. But also, even in the House of Representatives, there's a winner-take-all aspect to the congressional elections that occur within a given congressional district. So if I was in Italy and we had 20% of the population supporting the Socialist Party, they would get about 20% of the seats in parliament. In America, if 20% of the people were socialists and they were evenly spread out, the number of socialists that would get elected would be zero. This tendency toward winner take all and giving a strong weight to geography forces parties to be ginormous in order to be competitive. You can be in business in a European parliamentary system getting 5% of the vote. In America, the threshold to take power is 51%. And if you can't get close to that, you're not really a player. Now, think of the number 51% or 50%. 100, as in 100% divided by 2 is 50. If you take 100 and divide it by 3, you get 33. There's lots of places in our system where this 51% number is a required threshold to take power. You're not going to have three different political parties that simultaneously have a realistic chance of hitting 51%. For this reason, we have never had three major political parties at the same time, and we never will until we change the Constitution. If you want three cars in the garage, you got to build a different kind of garage. You ain't going to force three cars in there. It ain't going to work.
Okay, my turn.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, I'm changing to me. How should the speaker should be showing me now instead of you? Oh well, I'll just show both of us. Yeah, I'll just have to show both of us. Here's my point of view. First of all, just on the question of can you have three parties? Yeah, you can. It isn't the Constitution. It isn't the Constitution that made things go wrong. Wait a minute. It isn't the Constitution that made things go wrong. Because if you're old enough to remember, Ross Perot did start a third party, and we had an election with three parties. Didn't last, but just that one election. Well, no, it lasted two elections. Now that I think about it, and we have the Libertarian Party gets on the ballot in Texas, and we have the Greens Party gets on the ballot in Texas. So there are more than it's not in the Constitution. What it is that the two major parties, which are both run by the bosses, the two major parties have fixed it so it's very, very hard for anybody else to win. So it's not that you can't have three parties. It's just that it's very, very hard to do. I want to list things that we agree on. First of all, we agree on getting rid of Trump. We would really like to get Trump out of office. In fact, I think we'd like to run him out of town. We believe in victory for the progressives that are running, like Bernie Sanders. Of course, he's an independent, but he votes with the Democrats. AOC, Alexandria Cortez, and I'm sure that whoever the Democrats run against our current senator will be the progressive candidate that we'll want to support. And most currently, most recently, and most controversially, was Mr. Mamdani, who won the most votes in the election for the Democratic primary in New York. I would want to point out, though, that those progressives have a pretty rough time, not just with the Republicans, but also with their own party, with the political establishment in the Democratic Party. After Mamdani won in New York, the traditional Democrats badmouthed him every which way they could, and then they set out to run an independent candidate against him. And locally, I noticed in the paper that our own progressive Congresswoman, Jasmine Crockett, lost out on an important committee assignment, not because the Republicans didn't want her, but because the Democrats didn't want her. And AOC, possibly our favorite progressive Democrat, has to win her primaries over and over again against traditional Democrats every election cycle. They throw somebody against her and they throw a bunch of money against her every time. And even though she's been elected a couple of times, you'd think that she's building up seniority and you'd think the Democrats would be supporting her, but they're not. We agree that we want to see victory for working families, and common sense would tell us that what Kenneth says is right. But what is common sense? It is our knowledge of the things we have experienced. It's experience. And yet, we have never experienced the situation that we are in now. Fascism is closing in on America. I've asked a number of audiences if you think dictatorship is taking over in America, and they all agree unanimously that yes, it is. I think we would agree that the situation that we are facing today is dramatically different, just as we agree on other things. And if our situation is dramatically different, then don't we have to consider responses that are also dramatically different? I'd like to get people to agree with me that something different has to happen. Something different. Take it away, Kenneth.
Okay. I certainly agree that something different has to happen. But what I would recommend is that, see, the Democratic Party has basically two wings. Those centrist, more conservative Democrats you're talking about, the ones who try to give AOC a hard time, the ones who are against Mamdani. And then they have the more progressive Democrats like AOC. What I would recommend is that the progressive left Democrats take over the Democratic Party, and that they have this fight inside of the Democratic Party in the Democratic primaries. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, if there was this, let's imagine that this new Workers' Party could exist simultaneously with the Democrats. What would happen, because of the winner-take-all rule that I talked about earlier? If the vote was split between Democratic Party and the Workers' Party, the Republicans will tend to win more congressional seats. You could easily end up with a Republican supermajority if that were to happen. And as far as it wouldn't be viable to have those three parties competing against each other. It would the Workers' Party would cannibalize the Democratic Party, and vice versa. The Republicans would gain. Now, when you talked about examples of successful third parties in a row, I have to push back on that. Ross Perot is not an example of a successful third party. He's an example of a successful third party candidate. Ross Perot did not field 435 candidates for the House of Representatives that were associated with Ross Perot. Ross Perot didn't run 33 candidates for the U.S. Senate when he ran in office. He just ran as an individual, right? A political party has to compete so that you need to win 218 seats out of 435 in the House of Representatives. You need to win 51 seats out of 100 in the Senate. That's what it takes to take power. At no time in American history have three political parties ever been posed to win those kind of victories at the same time. The maximum has always been two parties. Now, the progressives, they're in a position, especially because of the things we're talking about with Trump's fascism, to really make a change in the Democratic Party. In fact, the people you cited are doing what I recommend. Mamdani didn't run as a third party candidate. He ran in the Democratic primary. AOC hasn't run as a third party candidate. She's run in the Democratic primary. That's what we should do. We just need to do a whole lot more of that. A good example is what happened in the Republican Party. Donald Trump and the MAGA people didn't create a new party to compete with the Republicans. What they did is they used the primary system to take control of the Republican Party from the traditional Republicans. That actually worked. That's an example we can use. Whereas having a third party, again, there's no history of those being sustainable. Now, you said it's not written in the Constitution. That's not what I was saying. I said there's inadvertent rules in the Constitution that produce a two-party system. No matter whether people want one or not, we will tend to end up with a two-party system in this country because that's the way the Constitution works. When the Whig Party, there used to be something called the Whig Party before the Civil War. When the Republican Party came into existence, what happened to the Whig Party? They're gone. They disappeared. They were not sustainable. As the Republican Party rose, the Whig Party went away. Now, theoretically, something like that could happen with your Workers' Party and the Democratic Party. But again, the real risk is while the Democrats and the Worker Party are fighting it out, the Republicans are going to scoop up all the marbles, and we will be even in a worse place than we are now.
Okay. Let me set my timer. I'm not sure, Kenneth, that we could be in a worse place than we are right now. Certainly, Ross Perot did start a third party, and the third party ran. There were three parties. They just lost. And your point that they're not viable, that the third party in American history hasn't worked, is true. However, it is also true that there can be other parties. It's not that it's impossible. It's not that it's ingrained in the Constitution. It's simply a matter of the fact that the two parties that we have here now keep anybody from running successfully in a third party. So I said a while ago that I think we should do something different. My friend Kenneth thinks that progressives should build up their strength and eventually convert the Democratic Party to progressivism. Both he and I both want to end up with a political party in power that is good for working families. He doesn't think my idea is viable. I don't think his idea is even possible. I think that Kenneth's explanation of the problem and the solution that he suggests is the one that most people subscribe to, but I want to point out it's the only one that they've been given up to now. They haven't really considered anything else. My suggestion isn't popular. It isn't something we're familiar with. It's not even something that most of us have ever even considered. It's like the idea of a general strike, and there's a few people talking about a general strike in the labor movement, but we've never seen one. So we don't know what to think about it, and we don't know what to think about the workers' problem either. There's a problem in our fundamental thinking about politics. We are always thinking only of our side. We're only thinking more or less that we're in a one-sided contest. We have to get our people to vote. We have to get our people to understand. We have to get our people to do this or that. But it's not a one-sided fight. It's a two-sided fight. We have opponents. We have vicious opponents. And we have opponents that are smart, much better organized than we are because there's just not that many of them. And with practically unlimited financial resources and with total control over the information channels. Additionally, they're totally unscrupulous. These are the guys who make the bombs. They carry out the invasions. They drop the bombs. Their hands are covered with blood, and yet we have these opponents, and they are formidable. They're really strong opponents, and they do not want to give up control over one of their political parties. They want to keep both of them, the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, Kenneth pointed out some historical cases where a third party came along and made another party disappear. That was the Republicans in the 1850s, which were started, and they replaced the Whigs. But both of those parties were boss parties. The Whigs, the Democrats, and the Republicans were all part of the bosses class. The bosses that were running the new Republican Party were the industrialists, the new industrialists that were strong in the North. The party that was running the Democratic Party, especially the Southern Democratic Party, were the agriculturalists, and they had been successful up until that time. But the industrialists were coming on strong, and they eventually won their side of it. Similarly, the Tea Party in our time took over the Republican Party, but that was just the bosses taking over, just solving a strategic problem with each other. I've run over time. You go ahead, Kenneth.
Okay. The again, I want to emphasize that sure, legally you can have a third party. What I'm talking about is the viability, and when I say viability, it means the possibility that that party can actually take control of the government in a given election. Historically, we have never had more than two parties at the time that had a realistic chance of doing that. And I attribute that to those rules in the Constitution, not so much to the fact that the billionaire oligarchs contribute money to both parties. I agree with you that the billionaire oligarchs contributing money to both parties is a big problem. It's a big problem for the Democratic Party because it creates a division between what the voters want and what the donors want. That's the Democratic Party problem. In the Republican Party, it's not as much of a problem because their base voters care about other things like transgender children. They're not as focused on economics as the Democratic voters are. But you're not going to get around the structural issues I talked about just because you want to. We're not going to have a parliamentary system because our system doesn't fundamentally work the same way. And so if we wanted, and you were saying, you're saying, what when I talk about what the Tea Party or the MAGA faction did inside the Republican Party, that is a clear example of what can be done in our system. That actually happened. That's an example of validation of what I'm advocating because we just saw it happen in the other political party. We've never seen what you're talking about because keep in mind, not only do you have to field candidates, which Rose Perot did not do for all of the various offices that are in the Congress at the same time, you really need to also field thousands of candidates at the state legislature level, right? That's something that nobody besides the Democrats and Republicans, nobody does that at the same time. So they can't really take control of the government. And in order to get the resources to do that, hey, you're going to need not only tremendous monetary resources, you need people, right? And the people are voting for the Democrats or the Republicans. If you were going to start this third party, you got to peel people off, a significant number of them from the people who are already voting for the Democrats. And once you do that, the Democrats are not going to be, either the Democratic Party goes away either quickly If it doesn't go away quickly, the advantage doesn't go to either the workers or the Democratic Party, it goes to the Republican Party. And there's no math around that. And if you can see some math around it, I'm listening.
I liked it that you kept saying, we have never seen this, because that's my point, Kenneth. We have never seen a situation like that we're in right now. We have never seen a fascist takeover in the United States. And that's why I said we have to do something different. The other point that I made is that the bosses have united behind this fascist dictatorship, and they are very difficult to overcome, and we have to keep them in mind when we're figuring out our strategies. So I'm just trying to get people to consider the idea of a workers' party run by workers, financed by workers, and for the benefit of workers. And that's all the time we have. I appreciate you very much, Kenneth. Thanks so much for explaining your position, and I'm glad I got a chance to give out mine. Now I have to stop the recording. Stop.